I didn't see you there. Since this is the first time I'm doing face cam, it's a pretty memorable event. So I thought I'd do some sweeping with my trusty old broom here. Okay. Now, anyways, we're here to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. And as you all know, they just lost in the first round. Now, I think as the very critically thinking NBA fans that we are, we really just need to take a look at this front office. And now I'm just messing with y'all. We're going to look to trade the best player on the team. Now, I have come up with this completely realistic trade, and as an unbiased Celtics fan, I would like to offer up this first one. So firstly, I have the Celtics trading away expiring contract Gordon Hayward, the GOAT himself, Robert Williams III, and some picks or whatever in exchange for Joel Embiid. Now, if we're being completely honest here, in exchange of pure talent, it should just be straight up Robert Williams for Joel Embiid. However, you know, the NBA has a little thing where you got to match the salaries, so unfortunately we got to do that. Plus, on top of that, you really just got to make it seem like the Sixers are winning this trade. So, I mean, you have to do it. But if we're really looking at this from pure talent, we're giving up way too much. I mean, look at these two players individually. You have Joel Embiid, who's just this random 7-footer that plays like half the season, and he makes like TikToks or whatever. While you have Robert Williams, who can literally control time. Now, on a more serious note, the Philadelphia 76ers are not in the greatest spot right now. I'd compare this past season that they had to the one the Celtics had from 2018 to 2019, both of which had Al Horford, so that's something interesting to note. This man he just can't catch a break. And speaking of which, let's talk about this 4-game beatdown that Boston gave to Philly. Now, first of all, I want to make this very clear. Ben Simmons was not playing. If Ben Simmons was playing in this series, I guarantee you it would have lasted a lot longer than 4 games. Would they have won the series? I don't know. Maybe not. But it certainly would have gone on longer because Simmons would have been on Tatum. And Tatum went off on this series. He averaged 27 a game. But if Simmons was on Tatum, he certainly would have shut him down for at least a couple of those games and gotten them. But instead, man, poor old Matisse Thybulle. He had to guard Tatum and he just got cooked so badly. Secondly, and this one truly just makes absolutely no sense. It boggles my mind. So the main issue the Celtics have is that their main 2 centers are Daniel Theis and Enes Kanter. Now, Daniel Theis, to save his life, could not guard Joel Embiid to save his life. I mean, look at this play right here. Look where Joel Embiid catches the ball. He's at the 3-point line. And he backs him all the way down straight to the paint and gets an easy bucket. Now, this happened every single time that Daniel Theis was on him. Every single time this happened, it either resulted in a foul or an easy bucket. There was literally no stopping him when Theis was on him and forced him out for game 2. And on top of that, look at how many free throws Embiid shot through this series. Look at them. So it was very clear that Embiid's post scoring was the best option Philly had to compete in this series. And it was mostly successful. It's too bad they didn't have anyone to throw him an entry pass. Now, as for Joel Embiid, honestly, I really couldn't have asked more of him because this man played great. I mean, he was hitting step-back threes like it was nothing. It's just everything else around him doesn't really complement his skill set well. He would play a lot better if he had 3-point shooters and 3-and-D players around him. Thankfully, I've come up with a list of players that they can target in order to get better. And this list of players that I've compiled should help with their issues of having a weak supporting cast. So here we have Jeremy Grant, Robert Covington, TJ McConnell, Landry Shamet, JJ Redick, Ersan Ilyasova. That can't be right. It says right here that the Sixers had all of these players before and lost all of them. You know, I'm starting to think that maybe getting rid of these players might be the reason why they've struggled so much. What a concept! Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good transition to talk about the executive decisions this team's made, because they were certainly decisions, that's for sure. Okay, so quick rundown. We got Sam Hinkie. We all know what he did. Started the process by intentionally tanking and pissed off the rest of the league. However, it's important to note that the Sixers wouldn't have these 2 players without his methods. Whether you like him or not, you got to accept that part. Next, we got Brian Colangelo. And I really want to address this. The 2017 NBA draft. Markelle Fultz was viewed as the number one prospect and consensus number one overall pick. There is no reality of which someone knew that what would happen to him was going to happen. That was sincerely one of the most absurd situations that's ever occurred. No one knew that was going to happen. Honestly, if it didn't happen, the Sixers would be much better off. However, in hindsight, it does look pretty bad because the player that they should have drafted in Jason Tatum is now a superstar for the Celtics, and he would have helped a lot to mitigate the current issues, and he knocked him out of the playoffs twice now. And to end his reign with the Sixers, Brian Colangelo, he made burner accounts. That happened. So Brett Brown, the former head coach, was actually the interim GM for about a couple of months after the whole Brian Colangelo debacle. Now, the only really big decision he made was drafting Zaire Smith. And this made little sense because Michael Porter Jr. was still on the board. Now, I understand the issue was that Michael Porter Jr. had issues with his injury and whether or not he'd come back as the same player. But look at Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Joel Embiid was out for his first 2 years, and Ben Simmons was out for his first year with pretty big injuries, but they both came back and did well. The concept of taking a high prospect player and redshirting them for a year was not an unfamiliar concept. And it's not like Philly had like a top 3 pick. If they did, I would understand, but they had the 10th pick. It was most certainly worth the gamble. But they decided to draft Zaire Smith instead, who they poisoned. Yeah, they poisoned him, and he had to redshirt anyways, so that didn't work out well for anyone. Now that leads us to the greatest GM of all time. Now who am I referring to, you may ask? Masai Ujiri? Jerry West? Danny Ainge? Nah. We're talking about the absolute GOAT, Elton Brand. I've got a whole list of things. But firstly, the Jimmy Butler trade. Honestly, this one isn't even that bad if you really think about it. At the time, they didn't give up all that much. Yeah, they had to give up Robert Covington, but they were essentially giving up Robert Covington in exchange for Super Robert Covington. And honestly, I think Dario Saric is completely overrated. Now, this would have been a good move overall if Jimmy Butler resigned, but he didn't because of the organizational issues of which we now know exist. Honestly, I really don't blame him for making that decision because now Miami's doing great. And the way he handled the Markelle Fultz trade was just bad, man. I mean, he traded him for Jonathan Simmons, who's no longer in the league, and then flipped that for $2 million cash. So he essentially traded a generational prospect for $2 million. That's not good. And now we have Tobias Harris. And oh boy, this one is very, very bad. This might be the worst one. So, he really bit on the concept of believing that Tobias Harris was an all-star level talent. He was averaging nearly 22 points per game on the Clippers, of which he was the first option for and were a fringe playoff team. What did he give up? He gave up 2 first-round picks and Landry Shamet. That's very bad. And not to mention the fact he doubled down on this. By the end of the offseason, he gave him a new contract worth $180 million. And we've seen how he's done this past season, and he completely choked during these playoffs. He was very bad. And if it doesn't get worse, the contract that Tobias Harris currently has is more than what both of these two are currently making. And yikes. Okay, so next we have Al Horford. And it honestly just seems that the Sixers signed Al Horford specifically to spite the Celtics, because Al Horford was the guy that would consistently shut down in both Embiid and Simmons the past 2 seasons. So taking away that weapon that Boston had means that they could beat Boston. It's a good idea in concept, but it backfired for these reasons. 1, Horford and Embiid don't fit together on the court. It's a horrible fit. 2, they had to renounce the rights of JJ Redick and TJ McConnell in order to sign him. 3, they're paying a very old version of him $100 million. And 4, they lost to the Celtics anyways. So a few other problems with Philly. Brett Brown, I understand he wasn't a great head coach. He certainly didn't help their problems, but you cannot blame him for all the stupidity that I just mentioned. Now, the next thing I want to talk about has been a massive point of discussion, and it's whether or not the Sixers should look to trade one of Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons. Now, remember the bit I did at the beginning of this video? Yeah, that's how stupid all of you sound when you talk about it. I mean, look at this. What am I looking at here? This is really the best you guys could come up with? Are you serious? Okay, so I'm only going to say this once. I'm probably going to reiterate it later, but I'm going to say it once. You do not need to trade Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons to make this team better. They're simply way too good for you to just dump them for 25 cents on the dollar. Not to mention, they don't even want to leave. They both have multiple years left on their contract, and they're not even requesting to be traded. There's absolutely no reason to do it. The question that I ask here is that why should you trade them for a package of which that will certainly not be of equal value when you still have a lot of time to turn it around? Embiid's contract doesn't end for another 3 years. Now, it's very apparent that there are a lot of issues with this team. I mean, like, a lot of issues with this team, but I did make a list of which I think the Sixers should follow to make their situation better. And it may be like simplistic, but here's what I have. 1, fire Elton Brand. I don't think I need to say anything else about that. 2, find a way to get off the Al Horford and Tobias Harris contracts. Specifically, try finding a way to flip one of them in exchange for Chris Paul. Chris Paul has shown himself to be a phenomenal leader to young guys and has carried the Thunder to the 5th seed, and with a better record than Philly currently has. 3, move Ben Simmons to the 4 and surround him with shooters. Have you ever seen anyone try slandering Bam Adebayo for not being able to shoot? No? Maybe there's a correlation there. And 4, hire a good coach, because there are some pretty good coaches that are available on the open market right now. You have Kenny Atkinson, you have Tyronn Lue, you have Juwan Howard, who has said here that he doesn't want an NBA head coaching job, but if you can manage to pull him away from Michigan, he would be great because he served for the Miami Heat for 20 years as a player, and then on top of that, he's also been an assistant head coach to Eric Spoelstra, so he could bring some of that really good Heat culture to the Sixers, and that would definitely benefit them a lot. So if the Sixers really just buckle down this offseason and get these things done, they will most certainly be successful. And honestly, I really hope they do, even though I'm a rival of the team, because it's not even fun to slander y'all anymore. I mean, every time I slander a Sixers fan, it's not fun because the Sixers fans hate their team more than we do. If you gain anything from today's video, it's this one thing. Are you listening? Okay. You do not need to trade Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. That is not necessary. Please stop suggesting it. And that is all I've got for you guys today. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know down below of what you guys think of the face cam. This is the first time of me doing this, and this actually isn't my camera. This is my friend's camera. So this is kind of like a test run to see how it's going to be, and I really hope that I can make this a more permanent thing. Thus far, I've been enjoying it. I could display my Funko Pops and my KG thing. I do need a new chair, but it gives me an excuse to look good. So yeah, let me know down below. Anyways, that is all I've got for you guys today, and I'll see you next time.